Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is the 10th of April. On the off chance you follow me, you've seen the last couple of days I've done some recordings, some Instagram posts, and some articles with regard to this wave of buyers that are looking to buy businesses. They're all hot to trot. They've gotten um, some sort of education somewhere about how to buy a business. Some have bought courses, some have been watching stuff on YouTube and Instagram, and the internet's a rabbit hole, and the internet's a place where people can get lost very, very quickly. And if you're not guided, you can spend a lot of time, spend some money, make some mistakes. Um, and as a receiver of those buyers in terms of their inquiries, because I'm the one stewarding and shepherding the sellers to market largely, um, this isn't the first time I've seen this trend, by the way, but we're hitting a point of there's so much activity on the buyer pool that the market has shifted. It is now clearly a seller's market. Um, but there's a disconnect between the understanding of reality and what the course people are telling you, and how deals actually get done. So I'm not just going to rant about it. I'm going to show people some things. My intent here is to give you some data to work with and help you understand um, what is the mechanism by which deals, or what is the ecosystem in which the deals are happening. So hopefully this works. You're going to get to look inside the MLS system for businesses in Florida, and I'm going to show you the condition of the market. This will be brief. I'm going to show you exactly what it is we are looking at. Okay. So if this is working correctly, this is the MLS. This is the back end of the MLS. You as a consumer can access it as well. The way you access it is bbfmls.com, or you can access it through my website, which is www.yourfloridabusinessbroker.com. The difference between the two is that when you do it through my site, the inquiries from there will come to me. If you go to the MLS itself, you will reach out to every broker who has a listing when you make an inquiry. And what ends up happening is you end up crossing swords with multiple brokers, and the brokers get very upset about that. So pick a broker. Um, so first, I'm going to show you something which I think is important. I'm going to show you some context at a macro level in Florida. I'm just quickly going to show you how many businesses are for sale. So there's 2,126 businesses for sale in a variety of different SIC codes. Um, when I first got into the business, there were as many as 4,500 to 5,000 listings at any one time. Now, a lot of the entrepreneurs that are trying to get into the buying of a business space are doing that based upon an assumption that there is this wave of baby boomers coming to market to sell. So why is the inventory lower if all the baby boomers are retiring? Well, it's a couple things. One is that tariffs have tariffs, recession, COVID destroyed a lot of business, have destroyed the profitability or degrees of the profitability of some of the businesses. So the ability of the owners to actually retire is somewhat in retrograde. The ability of the business to get the number they need because they didn't do exit planning or plan for retirement, so they physically cannot sell and survive on the cash flow they have. Or they have family that have gone to college and are realizing that the job market is not what it was, and with the onset of AI, are now even more concerned because, well, let's face it, if 30% of college kids are unemployed, the idea of going to work at a coffee shop or taking over mom or dad's business is a little bit more palatable. So some of the inventory is going there. So inventory is low. It has been low for probably the last 5 to 6 years. So back to the MLS, there are 2,000 listings for sale. Historically, we assume that about 20% of them will come to market with a tax return as a source document. And you're going, what the hell does that mean? Well, what that means is that most small business owners don't want to pay taxes. And because of the tax structure and the way they're treated by banks, they tie up their wealth inside the business. And because they live off the business and the taxes are so onerous to business owners, They do things that mitigate the taxes and subsequently make it impossible to get a loan for a buyer to buy the business. So suffice it to say, if that was convoluted, if you don't have a tax return for your business, you are not getting a bank loan through the SBA. Period. End of discussion. That is how most of you will buy and realize that if they don't have a tax return, you're not even get on the starting line. Even if you have a tax return, the business still has to go through scrutiny. Generally, um, the business has to have continuous profit for 3 years that meets the spread. What I like to say, it has enough meat on the bone to service the debt with a buffer. It is not a sector that's in trouble. If there's declining revenues, even though profits are up, the banks get squirrely. So qualifying for an SBA loan is very, very, very hard. So go back to what I said about owners playing games with their tax returns and their financials to not pay taxes, they don't think about the sales process 3 to 5 years out. They just don't. There is a wave of exit planners trying to do education, but business owners are getting inundated to such a degree they don't listen. Their traditional advisors of accountants and attorneys generally do not even have the discussion. They don't care. It's not their monkey. The business brokers who probably should be having discussions are trying to live off of a commission. So let's just say that there's a vacuum with regard to seller education, just as much as there is to buyer education. So back to the 2,100 listings, like you can see, I've clicked tax return. Anyone want to take a wild guess on how many businesses are actually qualifying with a tax return? And there's the number 430. So it's well below the 20% number. Um, let's get into a local area dynamic because it shifts from place to place. That was an entire straight. Obviously, under statistics, when the data sample's larger, the numbers get out of whack. But in the metroplexes, we see the same dynamic, and it kind of holds the 20% rule. So we're going to back out and we're just going to go to the local market. For me, that's going to be the greater Tampa, Sarasota. Um, how many listings? There are 502. How many have a tax return? And we're down to 108. So right on the 20% number. Um, you will also find, and we'll go ahead and do this exercise, if we were to look into sectors, varying sectors have varying results with regard to viability for SBA. We're going to look at restaurants real quick, simply because that's a classic business that does not traditionally have good tax returns. They're very scarce in that sector. So same area, the greater Tampa to Sarasota market, there's 137 listings. How many have SBA provable books? Potentially, according to having just the tax return. Let's find out. 137 versus 26. So as I said, far, far smaller percentage by that category. So what's the point? Well, the point is this, that I'm going to stop sharing right now. The point is that without tax returns, businesses can't bank. So as a buyer, when you're on Biz Buy Sell or these other sites, they don't allow you to filter. So you're inquiring on listings, assuming I'm going to get a bank loan as my source of funds, and you're frustrating the brokers. And then the broker spends time teaching you, and you're fighting with them because you want to be able to get a deal done, but we can't get a deal done if your only source of funds is SBA. You have a perception to some degree that 10% is the number. 10% is not the number. You need post-closing liquidity. You have closing costs. You have fees associated with the SBA loan in addition to the closing costs. There are landlord deposits. So very often you need more than the 10%. Usually if you're putting $20,000 on, I always tell you, you need probably 55 to 65,000 to be safe to cover all the associated fees, depending upon the bank and depending upon the deal. So, you know, why I'm sharing this is you need to understand how to search and what the reality is with regard to what will work and what will not work. I have no other skin in the game. I want to sell you something, but if the deal won't work, the round peg won't fit in the square hole, it's of no use. Are this to expect the sellers to bend is a challenge. The sellers do the very much the same thing that the buyers do. The sellers don't get educated. They rarely talk to us years in advance. Getting a seller to change behavior is very, very hard. Um, Getting them to adjust the way they do their bookkeeping, or to not take cash, or to not hoard inventory or buy inventory to pay to lower their taxes. These are all variables we encounter every day. Believe me, the broker community is trying to educate sellers, but we're doing battle with a generation has largely ignored us and the dynamics of what it's really like to run a small business. The banks don't give them working capital just because they love them. They treat them pretty poorly. So, remember, the data is real. If there's 2,000 listings for sale and less than X have tax returns, your buying pool that you could potentially get into is pretty small. This is systemic across the United States. It has been this way for 20 years. I suspect it will remain so for 20 years, because small business has to survive. And if you think about it, they've been through hell the last 20 years. COVID, recessions, war, 9/11, the dot-com era, the Great Recession, all these variables have impacted these business owners. So I hope this you found this helpful. If you have questions, give me a call. I'm available at 321-287-0349, or you can email me at mike@tworld.com.